Third part. The massive stockpile cramming the floor had all been a 3D hologram. Greylancer nodded at Verosa, unflinching. The Thunder Tank will act and react exactly as if the OSB were operating it. It will shoot to kill. If you lose, you will also perish, Lord Greylancer. Is that understood? I expect nothing less. Good. No sooner had he said it than the OSB tank rumbled toward Greylancer. The noble felt the platform shake underfoot as the chariot hummed to life. Just as the enormous tank rolled within a meter of Greylancer's chariot, it crashed into the force field, flipping head over end in the air. Landing on its side, the tank spun around in a circle like a helpless insect, until it righted itself and retreated without a sound. One silver ball, a second, and then the third shot it from the 3 barrels, extending from the tank's gun turret. Greylancer swung the chariot right and evaded the first 2 shots, but the third hit the force field. The silver projectile was an artillery shell measuring 30 centimeters. The outer shell splintered away, while its contents grazed Greylancer's head and disappeared behind him. Now let's double the force field, evading the incoming cannon fire. The enemy circled right and fired more shells. When one shell smashed through the floor near her feet, Laria let out a shriek. Suddenly, Greylancer's chariot took to the air and cut a diagonal path toward the tank. The noble had switched to gravitational propulsion. The OSB computer faltered for a split second. Unable to calculate an evasive maneuver, the computer rotated the tank's turret and fired a random shot. Though the shell hit the chariot head-on, both the casing and spikes were deflected from the armor. Switching off the force field generator, Greylancer whirled atop the enemy's gun turret. His right arm rose skyward. The silver lance in his hand came down like a lightning bolt. As soon as the blade slashed through the thunder from top to bottom, Greylancer jumped back onto his chariot. A red streak tore through the contours of the tank, growing thicker and thicker until the armor ruptured and exploded. A massive fireball swallowed Greylancer and swept across the ground and sky. The scene was strangely quiet. Nearly 10 seconds passed before the fire consumed the tank and went out. Greylancer and the chariot appeared above the black ruins like a dream. Laria ran to her brother. Why must he be so reckless? Well, is the chariot to your liking? Verosa asked politely. It is a fine chariot. Naturally, said the weaponsmith, cocking his head with a self-satisfied smile. Why didn't you equip every chariot with a superior force field to begin with? Laria asked, an edge in her voice. There was no predicting what the enemy was capable of. But we've engaged the type of OSB tank in battle more than once. An indescribable look of horror came over Verosa's face. Are you perhaps suggesting that I might be lying? I'm sold, said Greylancer, electing not to answer. I shall ride this chariot tomorrow morning. See that you get it ready. After handing down this order like only a noble could, Greylancer switched on the anti-grav belt and floated away, his sister following in his wake. Page break indicated by a small cross. Watching Greylancer and Laria leave, Verosa grumbled quietly to himself at the door. He distrusts even this weaponsmith, who has served host Greylancer for 5,000 years. Such banality. A worthless master. And then a broad smile came across Verosa's face as he continued. I would have expected nothing less from my master. Lord Greylancer, A mere grub of a son that you are compared to your father. You shall have my grudging support in these skills honed over 5 millennia. Long life and well-being, my lord. The next day, the counterinsurgency forces departed for the deadly battleground. Since the troops couldn't very well proceed down the road in a convoy, the army boarded a cargo vessel and within 3 hours arrived in the western frontier sector, Merling's domain. In a siege such as this one, a gravitational barrier typically shielded the castle, nobles' residences, and the strategic headquarters. The initial attack necessarily involved attempting to destroy the barrier. But Duchess Markella, the supreme commander of the counterinsurgency forces, could only blink in disbelief upon hearing the analysis reports from the aerial reconnaissance sensors. As unconventional as the Western Frontier Overseer may be, it's impossible that he is shielding his entire dominion with a gravitational barrier. It can't be done without the capital's galactic energy changer. This was Dorzag Yanzerlai, a Duke of the Eastern Frontier Sector. Then Merling must have procured a copy of the very same device, said Merkala, having already regained her composure. Glancing at Greylancer with her blue pool, she said, "You're awfully calm. Why is that?" "No reason. Only that I've always believed anything is possible. Things that both the nobility and humanity might struggle to fathom. How very mindful of you." Merkala turned to the data projected in the air. According to the data, the barrier's strength is 100 quadrillion joules, nearly enough power to keep the barrier up and running for eternity. We are nowhere unless we dispense with this barrier first. So the full force assault would require some time. And then how about the age-old tactic of starving at the enemy? Mark Lieutenant General Draz Gershin of the Capital Defense Division, in jest. Though the strategist's record against the OSB was unblemished, he had an unfortunate knack for souring the mood with his arrogance. When no one laughed, he winced. Needless to say, human blood was the nobility's, vampires' source of sustenance. This supply, collected both willingly and unwillingly from the local population, not only sated the nobility's appetites, but also filled frozen or otherwise dried and pressure-packed storage units scattered across the land. A year's worth of blood was typically kept on hand in any noble castle. In addition, Merling had perfected a cocktail of mineral-infused synthetic blood that tasted much like the real thing. He manufactured it in large quantities in a factory near the castle. A prolonged siege of a year or 2 years was exactly what Merling desired. Of course, Lieutenant General Gershin had quipped about starving the enemy, knowing so. Yet the members of the War Council remained still as stone. Every castle floor plan includes secret evacuation tunnels, but the possibility of escape is rendered nil since the entire territory has been shielded by the barrier. No escape and no entry. It will be a long, drawn-out war. Scanning the data, General Li Haochu took a drag from his pipe. He was an elite strategist from the War Ministry. Given his background, perhaps he was well suited for a long-term conflict. That will not be the case. The generals, who'd resigned themselves to a protracted campaign, made no attempt to hide their anger or disbelief toward the voice of dissent. Just what is it you mean, Lord Greylancer? You possess some stratagem against Lord Merling. What I possess is an understanding of Merling's character. Greylancer extended his left arm. The image of a noble appeared. Merling. Despite recognizing it was nothing more than a hologram, the generals looked aghast, partially thanks to how lifelike the young noble appeared, and partially due to the fear he inspired. "Behold his face," said Greylancer, jerking his chin at the handsome face. His lineage, rank, and record are beyond question. You can recognize a warrior by his look alone. Do not be fooled by his handsomeness. His is a face to fear, Commander. Agreed, Merkla answered flatly. His fierce will for a fight, incisiveness, and ample confidence. She addressed the hologram. How did you come by these qualities, Merling? This is the face of the enemy that we must fight. No doubt you will stand your ground to the very end. What clever gambit will you try? His only option is to wait out the siege. We need only come up with an anti-barrier to neutralize his defenses. Far better than suffering casualties through needless skirmishes. Merling may have played right into our hand. This was General Said Germain, General Leihacho's colleague and the number 2 man in the War Ministry. A standout in the ministry derided for their armchair strategists, he was recognized as one who piloted his own aircraft. Who do you think you're dealing with? Greylancer scoffed. To the battle-weary warrior, Germain was nothing more than an untested general, an impostor trying to pass as a hero. Despite the general's sneer, Greylancer continued. Look at his eyes, the jaw. This is the face of a man who will lead his men into enemy territory himself. Such a man will not be content to hole up in his castle and play a waiting game. Open your eyes. The moment we let down our guard, he will strike us with his army. A cunning attack that we cannot even imagine. You're an impudent one, seethed Germain, baring his teeth. His fangs gleamed in the moonlight, streaming into the war room. You are speculating without substance. What knowledge have you about Merling? Grow up together, did you? Today may well be our very first encounter. Do you mean to mock me, Greylancer? A murderous air that made the warriors want to turn away swept across the room. Germain shot to his feet. That's enough, both of you. The voice of the Supreme Commander immobilized Germain. As long as I am Commander, I will not have any infighting. If you desire bloodshed, let it be Merling's. On the battlefield, a superior's command was ironclad. Germain sat down in indignation as Greylancer stifled a smile. The Privy Council's orders are to end this conflict within 5 days. Time enough left to our own devices, said Merkla, smiling. Had she been entrusted as overseer on pedigree alone, the Duchess would lack the wherewithal to manage the frontier. At any rate, let us put forth our best efforts. Lord Greylancer, can you verify your assessment? No. It is solely my assessment of Merling, but make no mistake, anyone with a passing glance at Merling, even from a distance, would concur. As much as I'd like to agree with you, that alone will not do. General Germain, I believe yours is the most sensible course of action, but we haven't time for a drawn-out war. Have you a strategy to cross swords with Merling within 5 days? Germain distorted what was already reputed a menacing face and closed his eyes in deep contemplation. The battle-tested warrior and master strategist thrived in times like these. Smiling, he opened his eyes almost immediately and nodded, Yes, I do. Chapter 7 and